Hello and welcome back to episode 70 of the Sports Brief podcast. We've got a special guest with us, but that we're extremely excited to have on. Joe Price, one of my good buddies from work at News Center 1. Joe, I have to say, it's such a refreshing change of pace to have not just a Cowboys fan on, because Cowboys fans can be misconstrued, but a realistic Cowboys fan. It's so awesome to have you on, and somebody that truly looks at the full scope of things and judges them for what they are. Thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks, I guess. I'll try to take that in the spirit it's intended. I hope I represent Cowboys Nation well today, and every time I'm on the podcast, it's a pleasure to be back. So, thank you.
Yeah. Well, and it's always a pleasure because the last time we had him back on in October, we talked about a lot of different things, such as Super Bowl 55, who we thought was going to be there, teams that really had a shot, teams that didn't, and I think one of the things we brought up was just the whole thing about Tom Brady, and we're going to discuss all that when it pertains to the Super Bowl and all these different things that pertain to the Super Bowl, including we're even going to talk about some promising players from the AFC South and NFC South that we really like in the terms of the Titans and Bucs. Also a free agent we feel our team needs to sign, even maybe a move if we feel comfortable that our team needs to sign, or our team needs to make, So before we do all that, we're going to make sure all of you that watch us on YouTube, make sure you guys like and subscribe down below. Helps people find the show. We're already at 100 subscribers, so we deeply appreciate all the love and support that we've got, and we're looking to continue to expand. So without that, as aforementioned, we discussed back in October, I think it was October 15th off the top of my head, who was going to be in Super Bowl 55. And I think, oddly enough, we both made it really wasn't that bold of a prediction when we said that the Chiefs were going to be in there. But in terms of the NFC, I felt like I was in love with the Packers and Seahawks, and I think you were on kind of the same gravy boat train there, and as well as the Bucs, I think. But one thing is we said is we just can't count out Tom Brady. And I stopped counting that man out ever since that 28-3 loss. But the biggest question to me throughout this entire thing is, yes, of course, who's going to win the Super Bowl? But the biggest thing to me is who needs to win the Super Bowl more between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes? In terms of for a legacy type of a question here, Joe, can you start by telling me, in your opinion, who really needs to win the Super Bowl more from a legacy perspective?
From the outside looking in, I don't know that either of them do. And I got two part answer to this question because it's more complex than one would think. From the outside looking in, Tom Brady's legacy is already cemented as the GOAT. It's really hard to argue with 6 rings and getting to a 10th Super Bowl with a second team in a division that a lot of people don't recognize as being really tough. But each team in the NFC South has been to the Super Bowl now in the last decade, at least once, which is something I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. It's a competitive division, and he got to the Super Bowl with this team. So Brady's cemented his GOAT status, and Patrick Mahomes is 100% the quarterback of the future. Based on an eye test, I keep hearing everybody on sports radio say, based on the eye test, you look at Patrick Mahomes, and he's the best guy out there, just in terms of general skills. It's kind of a rare combination of Aaron Rodgers' athleticism and Tom Brady's kind of clutch ability, and a few other, different kinds of talents thrown in there. So I'm not worried about Patrick Mahomes' future going forward, barring, something awful happening to his legs or feet or something, God forbid. However, from the inside, I think for Tom Brady personally, and this is just my inference based on observing him for, the better part of 2 decades, I think it means more to him than it does to anyone else. I think that's why he chose Tampa Bay over the many other spots he could have landed. I think he and we'll get into this when we kind of break down each squad. I think he looked at what was available there, what their schedule looked like, who they had to play that year. I think he looked at all the factors, and I think it wasn't the easiest path for him, but I think it was the most advantageous to get him to a Super Bowl and give him the opportunity for that 7th ring. And I think the fact that everybody had reasonably assumed that the Chiefs would be repeating Super Bowl competitors for the AFC this year, contenders. And I don't think Tom Brady is unaware of all the talk about how Patrick Mahomes is the new flavor of the month. You know, the face, not just the flavor of the month. He's the face of the league, and you know, at such a young age, he's just 24 now,
25, something like that. Yeah, he's young.
He, Lord willing, he's got a bright future ahead of him at on the field and just in terms of being the face of the league. And I would bet that Tom Brady, being aware of that, knows how Mahomes as an up-and-comer affects his legacy. Because we're saying nobody's ever going to go to 10 Super Bowls. Nobody's ever going to win 6 rings, maybe 7. It's just not going to happen again. And then Mahomes comes along and wins the Super Bowl his 2nd season and pretty much does it single-handedly. I mean, he has a lot of weapons on that team, but he had to come back in each of those, the championship and the divisional and eventually in the Super Bowl in order to win those games spectacularly. So I think to bring it all the way back down to your original question, I think for Tom Brady, it means more. But just for him, not for our legacy looking at him, but for his own, like, whatever drives him, whatever causes him to continue doing this job at age 43 and not eating strawberries and, you know, exercising. You know, he's got this insane training regimen and just this really kind of cloistered life that's built entirely around being a quarterback in the NFL and being scary efficient and scary
effective.
Yeah. So I think we'll all, whoever wins tomorrow, it's gonna be a good game, and I think nobody's gonna think any less of Tom Brady, and I don't necessarily think it'll be that big a surprise if Patrick Mahomes wins, because I think he's got the potential to win 7, potentially more rings. He really does, especially with his age. I'm flying in circles now, but that's the main thing. I think for Tom Brady, as it pertains to Patrick Mahomes in particular, it's a bigger deal. That's why the matchup is so exciting. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy things about this season and about these playoffs. You know, the home field Super Bowl aspect, it barely feels like it's a part of it compared to the Brady Mahomes matchup. Yeah, so I don't know if that makes sense as a long-winded answer.
Absolutely. And I think the term you would use, that's a long walk for a short drink of water, but that would just be the term that comes to mind. No, I'm kidding. It was absolutely. I think you hit it on the head because I was actually going to go the other direction here for Patrick Mahomes, but if I was going to make the point for Tom Brady, you just made every single point that I would have said for Tom Brady. So that was actually a very good explanation. The only thing I'll say is this. In Patrick Mahomes' 2nd year in the NFL, second year in the NFL, first year as a full starter, he threw 50 touchdown passes and was amazing on his way to the NFL MVP award. I mean, he made it all the way to the AFC Championship game where he lost to Tom Brady, who went on to maybe win one of the most boring Super Bowls in the history of Super Bowls.
Easily one of the most boring in the last 25 years. That was like the snoozers we used to get in the early 90s before the Cowboys started winning. But
but I think it's really important to note that he did lose that game to Tom Brady. And
Yeah.
because of that, I think that I clearly it probably drove him for the next season, but he didn't get to play Tom Brady again the year he won the Super Bowl. The year that he was that Tom Brady was out and at that point had lost in the first round, I believe, for what was honestly one of the biggest shocks I think I've seen in the NFL in a long time.
Oh, the at-home loss to Tennessee, where the Patriots fans booed Tom Brady off the field after his pick six.
And I'm thinking, listen, if you're gonna boo this man after he has won 6 Super Bowls, I couldn't believe that to this day, Joe. I still can't believe that happened. But I will say this:
I can because I know Pat's fans.
Well, yes, but I think for me though, it was the most shocking thing about it was the fact that people are forgetting that Patrick Mahomes didn't get to play Tom Brady. So he played a Jimmy Garoppolo who quite honestly, if he would have connected on that last Hail Mary touchdown, I think we'd be having a different conversation about Patrick Mahomes right now. But at the end of the day, he didn't get to play Tom Brady. So I think it means more for Patrick Mahomes, who in his second year in the NFL and first season as a starter was phenomenal, but lost to Tom Brady, who went on to win the Super Bowl. I think it means more from that perspective for a player that, like you said, is the talk of the NFL, is the face of the NFL. For a guy that needs to win this game, it's Patrick Mahomes, because I feel like, you're going against one of the GOAT. We can't debate that anymore. We're going against the GOAT for a guy that has he's probably going to be the GOAT. Like, he's got a very good chance of being the GOAT. So
yes.
if we're talking about that perspective of a guy that's already the GOAT against a guy that's going to be, it has to be Patrick Mahomes, because in their first matchup he lost. We don't know that Tom Brady is ever going to be back. I'm not doubting him, but I'm saying we don't know that he'll be back in the Super Bowl again. But I'm saying the fact that he's at 10 Super Bowls is incredible. We don't know. It's Tom Brady. We said it back in October. We're never going to doubt this guy again.
Never
but
say
at
never.
The same time, yes, but at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen next season and in the future. So for right now, at this point in moment in time, it has to be Patrick Mahomes. He has to come out and win this game, in my opinion.
That's you make solid points. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. And to put an embellishment on that point, Patrick Mahomes has so far followed a very similar career path to another quarterback who I thought for a long time was going to be the quarterback of the future, who came out of NC State and Wisconsin and went to the playoffs in his first season as a starter, won the Super Bowl his second season as a starter in a blowout game. A phenomenal blow. One of the more entertaining blowouts I've ever watched, but that's mostly because I'm a Denver Broncos hater. And then lost his third Super Bowl in his third full season as a starter. His third full season as a starter, he went to his second Super Bowl and lost that to Tom Brady. And that, of course, is Ciara's husband. Mm-hmm. Suddenly I actually dropped his name, but that's really funny. I remembered Russell Wilson's entire life story, including his wife's name, but I couldn't quite remember his name. For a long time, and he's still great. We were talking about him being an MVP and even potentially appearing in the Super Bowl if the Seahawks ever, grew a defense, which they never ended up doing. This game, the Super Bowl game that's happening tomorrow, I don't know if you've told the audience that you're recording this the day before the Super Bowl. That's probably important that we get all these hot takes, time stamped. So
yes.
So if our predictions are 100% accurate, then it won't look like we just recorded it after the fact and described the game.
Yeah, this will be up tonight, so people will hear this. This is going down on Saturday. I'm putting it on timestamp right now. It's 12:31. It's February 6th, Saturday at 12:31. These are all hot takes, and this will be up tonight, so people will generally be able to know when this goes up. So sorry.
They'll be listening to this while they're slicing up their jalapenos tomorrow.
Yes,
before the big game,
exactly.
As is custom. So this game tomorrow. If Mahomes wins it, he begins to move into Brady territory because he has one more ring than Drew Brees. He has one more ring than Aaron Rodgers. I guess it puts him in Eli Manning territory in more ways than one.
Yep.
However, if if the Bucs do win this Super Bowl, he might end up being a Russell Wilson type of character where he's great, the talent's there, he was even on a great team, but for some reason the timing, it can be fluky plays, terrible play calls by your egomaniacal coach at the end of the game, that kill the game for you, or it can kill career momentum, because the implosion that took place in that Seattle locker room after that Super Bowl loss, I mean, that's still reverberating for the Seahawks for certain, and throughout the rest of the league, as various players from that initial Super Bowl winning squad have kind of gone on to other places or retired. So, and that was only 5-6 years ago. So nothing lasts forever. It can last a very long time. It can last up to 20 years in the league, apparently. It used to be a smaller number than that. But a loss for the Chiefs tomorrow wouldn't just be bad for Patrick Mahomes' legacy, but it could undercut the momentum of that team that right now is one of the most stacked teams. I mean, I feel like it's other than the Bucs, it's the most stacked team in the league, and to their advantage, a lot of their contract stuff is already figured out. Mm-hmm. Like I think they've got all their major players signed, and they don't have a lot of their stars going other places in the next couple seasons. So, hope for the sake of Chiefs fans, you want that to continue for a while. But a Super Bowl loss would I think impact that optimism that seems to kind of surround the Chiefs right now, to the point that back in October, we barely even discussed it. There was no discussion of whether or not the Ravens or the Bills. We all thought they had a puncher's chance, maybe, or the Titans even, of getting in there. But the Chiefs have been so dominant the last 3 seasons, really.
Yep.
So it's hard. So I agree with you in the short term. This is a more important game for Patrick Mahomes' legacy. Mm-hmm. And even the long term. Wow. Yeah, that's the thing about this. It's how light is both a wave and a particle, depending on how you observe it, or that's what they tell us in science class. I don't know, if that's actually true. I've never taken to finding out. But this matchup, every time I have a winner picked, but in my head I'm like, yeah, but this could happen, and yeah, but that could happen. There's so many facets and so many individual matchups and the greater legacy things, and it's really an exciting Super Bowl matchup. I don't think I've been this excited, in a while.
Yeah, me too. And I think, like you said, it's, there's a lot of different things. And you actually pointed to one of my bigger points that I forgot to mention, that if Patrick Mahomes does lose this game, it could really potentially kind of hurt his legacy a little bit, because, again, he might not get this chance with a guy like Tom Brady, again, who is clearly the GOAT at this point. But, I think – yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, no, yeah, you're absolutely right. He could lose tomorrow and then win 3 or 4 more in the course of his career, and people would be like, yeah, but he couldn't beat Brady.
Yeah.
It's that kind of the way that Eli Manning has kind of haunted Tom Brady. Even though we can get into this later, Tom Brady didn't lose any of the Super Bowls that he lost. Yeah. He didn't really. For a long time, you could make the argument that he didn't really win a lot of the Super Bowls that he won.
That's true.
Because he doesn't have the signature, the Jordan walk-off shot, or the crazy play, the wasp play like Mahomes had in the Super Bowl last year. What he does is he just gets converts on 3rd down over and over and gets them in field goal range with no time left, and they kick a field goal and they win. And that's how they get you. They don't do it. They've never, as the Patriots anyway, not so much the Bucs. How they got all those victories was never spectacular, and so It's hard to pin either the wins or the losses on Brady, except for the sheer number of him being there for them and how he has more wins than losses at this point.
I will say, though, I feel like if we can blame any loss or any Super Bowl loss on Tom Brady, I feel, in my opinion, I think it would be the 2007 loss when they played the Giants the first time and Eli Manning came back to work. Because, I mean, you think about it, I think from off the top of my head, maybe this isn't right, but Tom Brady, I think he was the first quarterback to ever throw 50 touchdown passes in a season that year. They had Randy Moss, who caught like 24 touchdowns. They had one of the best offenses. They were undefeated during the regular season, where they went like 18 or 19-1. They only lost the most important game. But I feel like if anybody can blame, if there's any game at all, it's that one, because of, you were quarterback of the best offense in the NFL. You guys were hot shots, and then you only scored 10, 14 points or what, I think whatever it was for the Super Bowl.
Well, they were winning with how much time left in the fourth quarter? I will grant you that, except that Giants defense, which had been good to great all year, played their best football in that last part of that fourth quarter.
That's true.
And you have Strahan and Justin Tuck and was Jason Pierre-Paul on that Giants squad, or was he in the 2012?
I think it was the 2012. I think that was more like the Osio Manura guy.
Yeah. Like
they went after Tom Brady. They really did.
And that's I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit, but that's how you beat him, is you frustrate.
Exactly.
I mean, that's how you beat any quarterback, really. Should we make our picks so we can break down why? I want to hear.
Yes, let's go ahead.
Like we're actually getting into the game a little bit.
Yeah. Let's transition over to the game here a little bit in itself. Now we're going to start by making picks, and then also kind of looking at both teams, kind of comparatively, looking at in terms of offensive weaponry, the defenses, some things we like, some things that could potentially be game changers. So right off, we'll start off with me. I'll make my game time pick here. Here's the thing. We talked about it in October, and it's gonna rear its head again right now. I don't ever, and never will I ever, never have I ever, or will I ever doubt Tom Brady ever again. Never again after that 28-3 win, a comeback win against the Falcons a couple years ago. I will never doubt Tom Brady again. However, with the weaponry that Patrick Mahomes has, and with the experience of winning one Super Bowl under his belt, and just the sheer awesomeness of the Chiefs in terms of being able to put up points, I think the Chiefs are going to win narrowly. I say they win 31-28 because of, again, I think Patrick Mahomes is incredible in the limelight. And this is another thing that frustrates me. Last year's Super Bowl, everybody was telling me that Williams should have won. I believe it was Damian Williams should have won the Super Bowl MVP award. I will say I can see why people would make that argument, but let's also take something else into consideration here. Okay. The man did not make that that wasp play. 3rd and 17. The Chiefs have to have a play. They have to have a play. And what happens? Patrick Mahomes happened. Patrick Mahomes went out there and made a play. It was kind of underthrown to Tyreek Hill for nitpicking, but it was perfect. It was the thing we needed to see. And Damian Williams,
he did throw it from like 18 yards back behind.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you talk about. But he hooked it, and that was the play that the Chiefs needed to get back into the game and go on to win it. Now, again, did Damian Williams make a heck of a play and do his thing? Yes, I will admit that he went on to go score the game-winning touchdown and all that, or the game-clinching touchdown, excuse me. But I will always have this debate. But for me, I think the experience of being in a Super Bowl and winning it, and for Patrick Mahomes, I think it's going to be enough, and I think they're going to take down the Bucs, who always just seem to hang around, no matter what. It doesn't matter. Tom Brady's always in the game. We covered that, but I think that Patrick Mahomes goes out there and gets Super Bowl number 2.
It's hard to disagree with you. All of your points are 100% valid. However, I am picking the Bucs to win a high-scoring game narrowly, probably via field goal. I generally don't guess scores. Because I'm just never right about it. But I could easily see both, like it being a 38-35 Bucs victory. Mm-hmm. I don't think either of these teams are running away with it. I it my reasoning for it is really more than Tom Brady. Uh, that I think the Bucs are going to win. I think in the quarterback matchup, like just these two guys, their two skill sets right now, tomorrow, not their overall lifetime, whatever. I think Patrick Mahomes is the better guy. You're picking him in the schoolyard, is the analogy. I would pick him for my quarterback. However, the Chiefs have played 2 home playoff games against pretty good defenses, but not super high-flying, high-pressure defenses. And I think that this Tampa Bay defense is as much of a reason as they're in this Super Bowl as Tom Brady is. And my evidence for that is the fourth quarter of the NFC Championship. Was it just the fourth or was it the third quarter? The second half, Brady throws 3 interceptions. And sitting there, having seen my team lose to Green Bay largely by cracking under the pressure and, officials blowing calls and then taking it back 2 years later. Not that I'm still bitter about that or anything. It's just I caught it. The way that the Tampa Bay defense was able to prevent Green Bay from capitalizing, they get 6 points off those 3.
It wasn't a lot. It just wasn't a lot, which was shocking.
Yeah, and to stifle the Green Bay offense in Green Bay in the NFC Championship game, you can talk a lot about the coaching. You can talk a lot about things that just weren't going Green Bay's way, but I believe that Tampa's defense was the main factor in their win at that game, and I think they're going to be the main factor tomorrow. In addition to that, that defense wasn't even at full strength in the NFC Championship. They didn't have either of their starting cornerbacks, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that they will have both of them back tomorrow.
I'm not looking. I'll bring up the injury report here as we head into but yeah, continue. I apologize.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to. I should have had the roster up here in one of these windows, but they're also going to have their defense. Excuse me, will be at greater strength than they were in the NFC Championship. And the Chiefs' O-line will be down 2 tackles, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Eric Fisher is out. He is out with an Achilles injury, yes. Then Willie Gay is also out. He's a linebacker on the other side of the football there. But Andrew
so they're just
Wiley,
missing one. They're just missing one tackle? Okay.
Yeah, it looks like Andrew Wiley, who's another offensive lineman, he's a full participant, but it looks like just one tackle for now, yes.
Yeah. So if and the Bucs have been aware of this for some time now that he won't be playing. So if they're smart, they're going to attack Mahomes and put him off his square all day long. And if they do that enough, he's stoppable. Then it doesn't matter how fast Tyreek Hill is, and it doesn't matter how nifty Kelsey is. You can stop Patrick Mahomes.
That's true.
San Francisco's strategy last year was to just pressure him and just keep him off his square. He'll get a few of them here and there, but they kept him from making big plays. But then they took their foot off the gas. And because they just thought they had a comfortable enough lead. I don't know what their strategy was there, but had they kept up the same kind of pressure on Mahomes, they conceivably could have won. You talked about this. This is just one Hail Mary play away from a
having a different conversation. Yep.
0-1 in the Super Bowl. Yeah. So, as dominant as the Chiefs are, I don't think when they faced the Bucs back in September or October. When did they play each other? They met this season.
Yeah, early in the season.
Yeah. I don't think the team that Bucs team had coalesced yet, and I don't think they were at full strength. And I think they're about as close as they've been all season to it now. And
Yep.
I don't think. I'm sure the Chiefs will be prepared, but here's okay. So when it comes to the defense, I think the Bucs defense is going to be the major difference. I don't think Brady's going to do much to lose the game. I don't think he's going to force it and make stupid decisions. I don't necessarily know that Mahomes will either. He's never really shown anything to tell us that's what he might do. He's not Favre-like in that.
Nope. Still hurts. Still hurts.
Sure. Well, he did that plenty for the Packers too, and for the Jets.
That's true.
So he spread the love around. But here, I don't know that Arians is a better coach than Andy Reid. I don't know that he's done a whole lot to prove to me that he's a great coach. I think having Tom Brady as basically your de facto assistant coach is a pretty helpful thing. And the fact that he just stood aside and said, "Yeah, Brady's as much." He hasn't said that publicly necessarily, but he's kind of implied it that Brady has as much kind of leadership, as much of a leadership role for the Bucs as Arians does. And I have a lot of respect for Andy Reid as a football mind, as a play designer. He's one of the greats. But his game management, his clock management is notoriously bad, and it almost killed them in the playoffs last year, and it almost killed them in the Super Bowl last year too. And I mean, they had a bit of luck and a bit of talent on their side, but those are things that I think Tampa Bay can exploit, particularly Tom Brady. I think if they play keep away effectively enough and pressure Mahomes enough, then they might not be able to shut him down completely, but they can match them on points. And that's why I think it's going to be, I think we both agree it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a lot of points scored.
Absolutely.
But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, when you keep your head on a swivel and ice water in your veins, I think the Bucs have an edge, and I think that edge comes from the defense. Yeah. Anything beyond that, the home field, I don't think it's. Maybe it would have been an advantage in a normal year without the quarantine.
Yeah.
We'll never know, or maybe we'll see next year. Something. Super Bowl won't be in Tampa next year. I think it's is it Los Angeles or
something like that. I'll check that out as well.
Sure, but go on.
I'm sorry. So I guess I'm just checking out the Super Bowl here for next year. Yes, it's actually going to be at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. So yeah. Anyway, kind of going back to a couple things you said. The injury report. It looks like the Bucs were going to be without Antoine Winfield Jr., who we're going to talk about a little bit later, and then also Jordan Whitehead. But they were both participants as of late, so I don't see them missing. But it does look like they might be without Jason Pierre-Paul. They're pretty good outside linebacker. Because
that's news to me. Where is he questionable or?
It says as of yesterday at 2:00, about 1:50. Excuse me. It says he did not participate in practice because of a knee injury. I don't know what that designates, but I don't know if that's necessarily of concern, but I'm not sure yet. But also Antonio Brown, who was questionable originally, did participate fully yesterday, as well as Cameron Brate, their starting tight end, or their good tight end, did not participate, even though he is questionable for the game as well. And as far as the Chiefs, we talked about it. Mainly everybody was a full participant. Even Mahomes, who had a toe injury, was full participant. The only thing is, I think the only one person who did not participate was Darwin Thompson, the running back, due to illness. But yeah, like I said, Willie Gay and Eric Fisher are both out, and Sammy Watkins is questionable. So there's a couple players there from both teams that you're kind of like, ooh, like this could be kind of big news, especially when we talk about Jason Pierre-Paul for the Bucs, and you also talked about, Eric Fisher is going to be a big loss for the Chiefs, but you also talked about Sammy Watkins, what's going to go on there. So there's some specific things that could go on. Since we're already on the subject, I feel like we need to talk about weapons. I feel like we need to talk about, you mentioned the defense. I think that the Bucs have had a very it's been an interesting defense because at times you're able to throw at them and other times you're not. At times you're able to run on them, i.e. look what Dalvin Cook did, but at other times you're not. Like it's an interesting defense to say the least. I mean, you got guys like Devin White who had 140 tackles this year, made the Pro Bowl. Levante David also had added another 117. Let's talk about the offensive side of the football in terms of weapons for both teams. I feel like people have slept on the Bucs receiving core for a long time. If you talk about like Chris Godwin, I mean Mike Evans is a perennial guy that comes out as a Pro Bowler, a 13 guy or a 10, at least like a 9 to 10 touchdown guy a year. You got Gronk, you got Antonio Brown. I mean, I feel like comparing these two, you really need to put some respect on the Bucs receiving core. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. They're quiet even in a game. Like Gronk didn't get his first look until I think the third quarter of the NFC Championship. Maybe
he just wasn't getting targeted. Yeah,
right. But then once he did, he made the catch and the run for a gain that was absolutely essential to that victory. And that's kind of what they've got, to use the old cliche. It's a bunch of guys who show up with their lunch pail every day and just go to work like it's a construction site or something. But they're not spectacular and flashy. Like Tyreek Hill is a human highlight machine, and Travis Kelce is I don't think I'm saying anything original when saying he's the best tight end in the NFL right now.
We actually had that debate. We actually had the debate between Travis Kelce and Travis Kelce and George Kittle. So I think that's also kind of a big thing there. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would put Kittle very high in the ranking, and there's an argument to be made for him. And he doesn't have a quarterback like Mahomes who's so well suited to the kind of tight end that Kelce is. It's the pairing of Mahomes and Kelce is really something special, just because Mahomes has such a funky throwing motion and ability, kind of like Aaron Rodgers, to just kind of throw from weird angles and off his feet and off balance.
And it goes like 50 yards and it's perfect. It's
right. And Kelsey's able to get to where the ball needs to be. He's he's done it over and over. And the Bucs receiving core in particular is just reliable. And which, when you have, that's a good pairing when you have a quarterback who's just, mechanical and methodical and exacting the way Brady is, having the receiving core that he can kind of spread it around to. He's got his little 5'7", 5'8" guy that he always kind of depends on. What was once, Edelman or Welker, he always had that kind of guy during his best years in New England. I think one of the reasons other than just like one of the reasons the Bucs receiving core doesn't get their praises sung as highly as the Chiefs receiving core does, I think, is because they also have a dependable running game, especially more towards the end of the season. I don't think anyone expected the kind of renaissance we've seen from Leonard Fournette. I haven't seen him play like this since he was at LSU, which is something. There are very few second acts in running back careers, with a few exceptions that you and I have talked about before. But because I was there, I was living in the Jacksonville area when the Jags drafted him, and that was a big deal, because he came from an SEC school and whatnot, and that's always a plus in that region. And he's been a disappointment. Or he was a disappointment in Jacksonville, certainly, but on the Bucs, he's just kind of like found a groove, and his groove that he's got into has given the receiving core, it's taken a lot of the pressure off of them.
Yep.
And
I would almost say like he's honestly kind of comparable to like LeGarrette Blount for Brady when he had him back in New England. Like, he's that big bruising tailback who can bust one when he needs to. Like, it's almost scary how similar they are.
Yeah. That's an apt comparison. And they bail each other out in the same way. I think I'm noticing that more watching this Bucs offense, especially over the last 3 playoff games, which I don't think either of us have brought up. All 3 of their playoff games, and they started in the wild card round, were away games, and particularly the Saints and the Packers are tough wins, and a lot of people didn't pick them to win those games. Yep. Just like a lot of people aren't picking them to win this, but watching them during those games play under really, not the. I think if it was a regular non-pandemic season, that those home field advantages might have been a little more advantageous to New Orleans and Green Bay in particular. But watching each of the kind of units of the offense and defense just bail each other out and work in concert really nicely. Again, back to Brady's 3 interceptions in the second half of the NFC Championship. That defense stood up, and when they needed to convert downs to kill the clock and to keep it out of Rodgers' hands, they were able to get those downs, and that's how those Brady Super Bowl victories have all gone. It's those kind of soul-crushing 3rd and 10 conversions that they just managed to get it, and yeah, and it's brutal when you're cheering against them. It's been fun this season because I've been rooting for Brady. Just as an aside, I don't think I got too deep into this, but I really have been rooting for since the Cowboys were eliminated. Since Dak's foot fell off back in September. I've pretty much and when all hope died, I still had hope. If you go back to the show we taped in October, I still had hope for the Cowboys that something miraculous could happen. But by Thanksgiving, I had pretty much decided that I wanted the Bucs to win it all, just to see the whole thing burn down. Because it makes a lot of people mad, but the people it makes the most mad are Patriots fans. Because those fans that booed him off the field, and I mean, they weren't 100% responsible for him leaving that organization. I think we know the conflicts between Belichick and Brady are pretty well known. But the ingratitude of that fan base just never ceases to rile me, and for Brady to go all the way, for him to even make it to the Super Bowl his first season with another team is mud in their face, and that's awesome. But for him to win it, it's a plus because it just rubs their face in it more. And I'd like to see a Florida team win. I mean, my loyalty is with Dallas, but I of the teams I hate the least, the 3 Florida teams are in there. Although Tampa Bay's never been my favorite. It always feels like just a weird organization. But I have some love for them. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think, like I said at the beginning, if Mahomes loses this one, I don't know that will prevent him. I'm pretty confident that he'll get back there at least one more time, and probably many more times than that. So that's why I don't feel in the long run, unless it's a momentum killer, long term, that it's gonna affect his legacy that badly. Like, worst case scenario is he becomes Russell Wilson, I guess. Yeah. And that's not a bad. That's not a bad place to be. And Russell Wilson still could go to another Super Bowl. Like, his career's not over.
Certainly.
And I think just in terms of raw talent, Mahomes is the better quarterback than Russell Wilson. So I'm not worried about him going forward. So it'd just be fun, just for the chaos that it'll cause. Because it'll show that Brady wasn't just a system quarterback, that it wasn't 100% Bill Belichick's genius, and that just because he, I talked about the Jordan, he doesn't have the signature Jordan walk-off. He's a lot closer to what the San Antonio Spurs were, if we're going to make a basketball analogy. And I rarely make those, but
That's a great analogy. That's a great analogy.
They were a dynasty that I always disliked. I'd say I'm loyal to Texas, but I always liked Dallas and Houston, the Mavs and the Rockets more than the Spurs, and especially those Spurs championship teams. As good as they were so dull to watch at the time.
I know.
And they you just couldn't figure out how they were winning, but they just win just by just doing the right thing in the right moment and just moving on, and that's how they did it, and that's how Brady has done it, which I think it defies kind of our preconceived notion of what a superstar should look like. Patrick Mahomes fits that very much because he's just doing crazy juggling acts out there, and I think that's why Aaron Rodgers was, for a long time, people considered him a better quarterback than Brady. I've said that in the past, but after more than a decade of being able to compare the two, and especially how Aaron Rodgers has showed up in NFC championships, I have to grant Brady that he's the common denominator in all these wins, even if his role in it is never as obvious as it is for these other quarterbacks that we talk about, especially Mahomes.
Yeah.
Go on.
I think I think it's interesting. When we kind of shifting back more to the focus of weapons here. I think the thing with last year is I felt like Brady needed more weapons, and then people were always saying, "Oh, well, he's going to go to a team with all these different weapons. The Bucs have all these different receivers," and he received hate for it. I couldn't understand for the life of me why a guy that was searching. I mean, don't get me wrong, he had some talent there. I think N'Keal Harry's going to be something special. Even James White is a good running back, but he was searching. He needed talent, and he went to a place that actually had some talent. On the outsides and some receivers, and all of a sudden he was getting hate for it. So I'm thinking okay, no matter what fans are going to say stuff, that's just how it goes. But at the end of the day, you go to a receiving core like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and again, we already said it. Even a guy like Scotty Miller, I would venture to say that because of Tom Brady, Scotty Miller's career has definitely come out and it had been something special. So for me, I mean, it's one of those things where it's interesting because you can hate a guy as much as you want, but you can't argue with Super Bowl wins. And I think I said earlier in the episode, I said Cameron Brate was their good tight end. I mean Gronk is their good tight end, but I mean you got all the way down here, you got good receivers and just weapons, and yes, it's amazing that Tom Brady made it back to another Super Bowl. But another thing that doesn't get talked about enough, he threw 40 touchdowns this year. I mean he just has not done that a lot in his NFL career. And yes, he's had weapons, but so. Last time I checked, that's what winning a Super Bowl is about. That's what putting together a good team is all about. You have pieces, in the back, on the outside. You got a good running back in Ronald Jones, who nearly ran for 1,000 yards this year. He was great coming out of Texas. I loved Ronald Jones. But then you got all these other weapons, and I just felt for Tom Brady because at the end of the day, I mean, what was the man supposed to do? You get all these weapons, and I mean, Patrick Mahomes is certainly no exception. I mean, we talked about Travis Kelce, who had over 100 catches as a tight end, which is it's almost unheard of, especially when we talk about other tight ends like Antonio Gonzalez. But I mean, that's a whole nother bag of worms there because he was amazing himself. But I mean, even guys like Tyreek Hill, who, like you said, is a human highlight reel. Every single play, he just there's one catch a game that he just seems to outrun everybody and just makes a lot of people miss and just makes something happen. He had 15 touchdowns this last year. I mean, Demarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman, who I think is so underrated. I mean, there's just so many weapons on both sides here that people. I hate to say it, but you can't just make a Super Bowl by running the football and playing good defense anymore. That's not going to happen because you have these other quarterbacks in the NFL that, let's say you shut them down for 95% of the game. Okay, that's fine. But they're going to put up at least 21 points. And if your offense can't put up 21 points with a good running back and a good defense, I'm sorry, but you're not going to make it you're not going to win it because these quarterbacks, like we've said it.
You're not even going to make the playoffs, let alone win a Super Bowl.
Exactly. And I mean, even the Vikings last year when they made the playoffs, yes, they had Dalvin Cook, who was having a great season, but I mean, last time I checked, Kirk Cousins was playing some of his best football, and I think there's a lot of different things you can take into consideration. But you can't just in the NFL, you can't just win it by running the football anymore. You have to have talent, and if you have a great passing game and a running game that complements it, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl with something like that. So I think it comes down to people say he's got all these weapons. I think it kind of comes down to okay. And what are they supposed to do? Not get a guy like Tyreek Hill or not take a guy like Travis Kelce. It's just a whole thing.
if you want to see what Patrick Mahomes would be like without weapons, take a look up in Green Bay and see how Aaron Rodgers is doing, and see how satisfied he is with his career arc, because he dragged that team to a Super Bowl win, and it's only because they had a slightly alive defense that was able to give them an edge over that Steelers team. Otherwise, I mean, he's been so close to the mountaintop so many times, and he can only do so much.
Absolutely.
You need weapons. You need a good defense. So I don't understand why anyone was chastising Brady for that.
It was just frustrating to me because I feel like it's not his fault. Like, he wants to go to a team where he feels like he's got weapons, and like the defense maybe wasn't on the same level of the Patriots, but I mean, not a lot of defenses were last season. So I mean, it was kind of one of those things where it was like, okay, yes, but at the same time, like, what is he supposed to do? Like, I mean, if it was me, if you look at every quarterback, if you ask all starting 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, I'm 100% certain that every one of them would prefer to be in a setup like with the Bucs instead of in New England. And that's not necessarily a bash against Bill Belichick, because he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest. But the point is, when it comes down to it, weapons make life much easier, and it's unfortunate, but it's just the truth. So I think it's important to kind of put that into perspective. So I mean, and you kind of mentioned Aaron Rodgers, that year you won, they won the Super Bowl. I believe it was 2011 off the top of my head, and he had,
that sounds right.
Yeah, it was that. I always get this year right. It's either 2010 or 2011. It doesn't matter. Point is, I believe it's 2011. He threw 45 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions, and he just got the job done. Like, I mean, it was one of those things where he did it with, and people forget about this as well. He actually had a somewhat respectable-ish receiving core. You talk about guys like Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, who in their own right aren't by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe it was 2010. I can't remember what year it was. I'm sorry. I keep backtracking. But at the end of the day, I just feel for those teams that truthfully, I feel for guys like Aaron Rodgers who are on those teams that truthfully cannot seem to catch a break. It was 2010. Oh, I'm sorry. It was the
2010 season, or the Super Bowl was in 2011.
Was in 2011. Yes, yeah. I'm sorry. But back to my main point of the weapons he had that year. I mean, again, Randall Cobb was a guy that was up and coming in the NFL. You guys had Jordy Nelson. I believe even off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I mean, he had reliable running backs and Ryan Grant, James Starks, John Kuhn, who we love. Greg Jennings. James Jones. I was going to say,
Greg Jennings was on that team, wasn't he? Yeah. He wasn't too shabby.
They even had Donald Driver back then. I mean, just from top to bottom, these guys were pretty talented. And maybe they didn't have Randall Cobb, but they did have Randall Cobb. They had all these guys. But Randall Cobb at that point in his career wasn't like as big as he was later on. But I mean, again, you had 5. You had Jordan Nelson, who's caught 15 touchdowns that. You had Greg Jennings, who caught 9. Jermichael Finley caught 8. James Jones caught 7. Donald Driver 6. Like, top to bottom, they just had so many weapons. And yes, Aaron Rodgers was amazing, but he had some help too. So when he had just a little bit of help, he had, I would say, to venture to
makes all the difference.
Exactly. I would venture to say he had one top receiver, and Greg Jennings was ish in that conversation. Yeah. But it's not like Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Can you imagine if Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce were in Green Bay? It wouldn't be fair. It would not be fair, because I feel like it would be Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers both have the same talent-ish anyways. Mm-hmm. I feel like, it's really hard.
I think they're very comparable as players. I think they got a similar style of.
Yeah.
It's some ways like Favre, but more controlled. Just in I don't know, Romo-like, I guess. But
yeah, but I mean, like, the thing about Favre is he just threw everywhere. Like, he didn't care. Like, if you were there, he was just going to try to throw it. But I think
they play smarter than that. I don't want to denigrate either of them.
No, you're absolutely.
But it's that kind of gunslinger, the scrambling.
Yep. Making a play. Yep.
A completely different style than Tom Brady, who, if you collapse the pocket on him, if that's something the Chiefs are able to do, then they're gonna have no problem messing him up, because he can't move when that pocket gets collapsed.
Absolutely. And I think that's it. That's going to be a big key for the Chiefs is collapsing that pocket. I think it's really going to be a key for both quarterbacks, is to put pressure on both quarterbacks, and I think that's kind of something that happens within in the NFL. You get two really good teams going at it. They've got good enough defensive lines and good enough defenses to be able to obviously get them there. But the vast majority, more often than not, it's because of great quarterback play. So it's going to be a great game. I'm super excited for it. Anything else you'd like to add about the matchup or anything else, real quick?
Let me take a look at my notes for 1 second. Weather, I don't think is going to be a huge factor. I got the weather at the Tampa airport, which is right across the road from Raymond James Stadium, on my phone here, and it's gonna thunderstorm all night, but it's gonna clear up by noon, which is typical Florida winter weather, and it'll be in the 70s all afternoon when the game starts. So the field might be damp, the air might be damp, but they're not likely to be playing in the rain, which if they were, I think that could radically alter the outcome of this game.
Absolutely.
Although I would say that the advantage goes somewhat to the Bucs for that, because
I would say too, yeah.
Their offense, I think they led the league in takeaways this year.
It was something pretty close. Their defense was actually very underrated in that regard, even though you could run on them, and at certain times you could pass on them, but they did get turnovers this year, which is, I think, actually is a perfect segue into our next thing here. We talk about, we've been doing this thing where the Sports Breed podcast, where we talk about promising players from each individual division. We started with the worst teams and headed to the top. Now we are in the AFC and NFC South. We're going to start here in the NFC South with the Bucs. Because I feel like it's important to, specifically younger players, it's important to shine a light on them and letting the teams know, hey, you've got a bright spot here. You definitely need to give them some props. So we're going to start with the Bucs here and continue our way of just bringing up these younger players. So, Joe, can you kind of just run me through a player through the Bucs, a younger player, first or second year preferably, that was really impressive to you, or maybe just recently drafted, excuse me. So, was there a player that really stood out to you in terms of the Bucs?
Well, he won't be a factor in tomorrow's game, apparently. But Antoine Winfield Jr.
Actually, I think it says here
he's a
Antoine Winfield. He was a full participant yesterday, so I expect him to be okay.
Oh, okay. I must have misheard you when you were running down that list, and I was like, oh, whoops.
I was also jabbering too. I think. Oh, I didn't see this. Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul did not participate yesterday, so I don't know if
they're both going to be there. I don't doubt that they'll show up. I would be really surprised if, maybe they won't be in every play, but I think they're going to be a factor, especially Suh, because he's been there and lost, right? He was there with the Rams 2 seasons ago.
Something like that. And it just didn't go according to plan. Yep.
Yeah.
And also, but kind of going back to it, I'm sorry to distract.
Antoine Winfield Jr. For a second-round pick, he has been a big factor for this. He's the safety, in case I didn't say that out loud, and that's a position that I didn't play in high school or anything, but it's always been an attractive position for me. That kind of hanging back and following the ball. It's a little like playing center field, which I've done a lot of, except you get to hit people. So I always pay a lot of attention to those guys, especially because my team never drafts defensive backs of any kind, which isn't 100% true. But
Trayvon Diggs, I guess, I don't know.
But in his one season here, because he was only he was drafted in 2020? Yeah.
Yep, he was just drafted last year. Yep, second-round pick out of Minnesota.
He made the Pro Bowl, first team All-Pro. It's at 22 years old. He's already made a difference for this Bucs defense on a team with a lot of people. There's a lot of other players on this defense that are noteworthy, and I think going forward, who knows what kind of quarterback they'll have, after this Super Bowl. I assume we'll have Tom Brady there next year, although that could be a whole nother discussion after tomorrow. With either outcome, I don't know if he's going to come back next year. But their defense is super promising, and having this guy, a second generation player, of course, because his dad was a Viking, right?
Yep.
And,
Antoine Winfield, Senior. Yep.
Yep.
I actually, before you kind of get the rest of this, I love I believe he made a big play against the Saints. I think it was a fumble that he caused, and he said he did it for his pops before when the Saints beat him in 2009. I was so happy. Like I rarely get it's frowned upon, and like it's a bad taste to like rejoice in other teams or other people's misfortunes, but just for what the Vikings had to.
I'm sorry. Why else would you watch this sport?
Yeah, that's true. I just felt like, watching something like that. It was just such a heartfelt and cool thing. Like even though he doesn't play for the Vikings, it made me like him that much more because of the respect he had for the organization and just that from that perspective. So I was so happy about it. But I'm sorry. Continue with your assessment.
No. Did it make up for the sack that he got against Kirk Cousins?
It did.
Okay. I think it's his only sack this whole season. I'm looking at these. Oh no, he got one against Carolina too.
I think he had 3 total, is what I'm reading here. 3 total.
Oh, I'm just looking at the regular season stats. Yeah, he probably had one.
He had one
against
the Broncos. Yeah, one against the Broncos, Panthers, and Vikings during the regular season. He also had a.
Oh yeah, okay. I missed that. The Broncos. Wow.
No worries. But you're right. He's a great player, and I think a guy that was mainly kind of a corner in college, but came into the safety, play safety in the NFL. A guy 5'9", 203. He's already got
reason I like him.
Yeah, he's short.
Any 5'9" player in the league, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be a fantastic player. I mean, a former Minnesota Gopher. I was a little irate that the Vikings didn't draft him, but it was one of those things where it wasn't necessarily a huge need, but they could see that probably things with Anthony Harris weren't going to fold out. So I wish they probably would have taken him in that first round or maybe early in that second round, but it is what it is. So I honestly feel like he's going to be something special already. Anything else in your assessment of him? I apologize.
No. Yeah, other than just keep an eye on this dude. I mean, he's already made waves in his rookie season. He's ostensibly playing in the Super Bowl tomorrow. He could be a big factor in this game too.
Mm-hmm. Very true. So
yeah, keep an eye on him in the Super Bowl and going forward as in his career in Tampa Bay, because he's definitely it's what we call a special lad.
Well, and I will say this before we move to me here. If he wins a Super Bowl and instead of his dad, I will not at all feel like not robbed at all, because I feel like he just deserves it and he's going to be a special player. So, and if he wins a Super Bowl, that will be the only reason I would ever be happy, because I do want Patrick Mahomes to win tomorrow, but I feel like I would be very happy if that happened. So I'll move to me here. I apologize if I'm holding things up. So I wanted to come out, and I think it's important to remember offensive linemen, because they can make a huge difference in an NFL game and everything. I mean, you talk about the Cowboys, who had one of the best offensive lines, because they just kept drafting offensive lineman after offensive lineman, and it created such a powerhouse in terms of running the football and creating protection for guys like Dak, that it was just so fun to watch. But I will say that I had to go.
Those were good times, by the way. I miss those days.
Yes. So because I brought that up, I wanted to go with a guy that the first round tackle they drafted in Tristan Wirfs out of Iowa, who, by the way, I feel like Iowa at this point is just they just pump out offensive linemen for the NFL. Yeah. Like that's what they're known for. But I mean, you want to talk about a guy in his rookie season who showed out. We talked about Antoine Winfield Jr. We need to talk about Tristan Wirfs. I mean, once again, their first round pick, the 13th overall selection in the 2020 NFL draft, played 1,073 snaps, only allowed one sack during the regular season. So as a rookie, and as we go into the Titans, I'll explain a little bit more about another play that I'm looking at. But as just with Tristan Wirfs, to allow only one sack as a rookie was incredible to me. I think give you guys a little bit more of a background on Tristan Wirfs, though, before I get into it. What makes it impressive is he was a former 5-star. I'm trying to on his 24/7 profile here. He went to Mount Vernon, Iowa high school. Excuse me, went to high school in Mount Vernon. Was a former four-star recruit out of Mount Vernon, and was a guy I think that was highly regarded in terms of his size. Already 6'5", coming out of high school, 320. I mean, that's just size. You can't teach size. So once again, a former four-star recruit out of Mount Vernon High School, and a guy that you really thought was going to be special. Played very admirably at Iowa, and was I think was a main reason as to why I was able to run the ball so effectively. And his first season, he came out and absolutely balled. I think, in my opinion, I feel like he was a main reason as to why that Tom Brady was so comfortable. Because you look at a guy like Tristan Wirfs, if you can protect Tom Brady, the rest of the NFL should just watch out. Because I mean, when you consider the fact that if you can protect him and he can just throw all over you, and you can do that with a guy like Tristan Wirfs, I mean, it's just incredible. So, no, I think he was absolutely a player that really helped turn the Bucs around this year, and is a big reason as to why they're in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. I know as a former pass rusher, you don't like hearing that offensive linemen are typically some of the smartest guys. Mm-hmm. When they're good, they tend to, especially centers, but even the tackles and guards, they have to have a really rare combination of size and intelligence and athleticism in order to be great at their position. Yep. And when an O lineman is great, you don't ever notice them unless you're the type of football nerd who really can pay attention to line play and watch what's happening in the trenches. And to be a 22-year-old rookie, to only allow one sack a whole season, like that's just mind-boggling. Like that, there's nowhere to go but up from there. Like it's like, or I mean, maybe I'm phrasing that wrong, but I'm just like the sky's the limit with that kind of talent, at least for a few years. And it'll be awesome for tomorrow in the Super Bowl, and I think going forward for a while for this Tampa Bay team. It's going to make it attractive whether or not Tom Brady decides to play the one more season he's contracted for with Tampa Bay. Whoever is the future quarterback down there, having a guy like this on your line is going to be a very attractive quality. Because I mean, we talk about quarterbacks never having weapons their whole career. A lot of quarterbacks have never had an O-line. Like poor Russell Wilson has never had the protection that he's needed, and we can talk about a bunch of other guys. So yeah, he's definitely a player to be keeping your eye on. And you're right about Iowa too. I mean, they play football there like it's 1935, and as long as they get these big these giant kind of idiot savants off the farms in Iowa, just bring them right from the hog farm to it's not Des Moines. What city is University of Iowa in? I know there's a bunch of hog farmers yelling at their screens right now because I don't know. My mom's from Iowa, so I should know this.
It's in Iowa City. Iowa
City. Okay, so Iowa State is in Ames then.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Iowa State, off the top of my head, yes, I believe Iowa State University. It's in Ames. Yep.
Yeah, that's because that's the Big 12 team that occasionally beats up on Texas, which is kind of embarrassing. So, and having attended the University of Minnesota for a little bit, I'm supposed to cheer against Iowa, but I just don't care about the Big 10 that much. But yeah, it's the point of all these jokes I'm making is that he's got a fantastic pedigree and has shown nothing but promise his rookie season, and yeah, he'll be fun to watch going forward.
Absolutely. I think so too. Let's see here. Now we're going to move into our switch to the AFC South here. We're going to be talking about the Titans. This one for me was a little harder because I felt like the Titans. I mean, the Bucs had a great draft this year, so that made it really easy to talk about. But the Titans, they had some players that could do some things, but not that got as much playing time as their previous draft class from 2019. So from the Titans, can you give me a player that also impressed you from the Titans?
Oh yeah, well, A.J. Brown out of Ole Miss. He's not a rookie. This is his second season. He's he's been the Titans offense has been kind of the running game has overshadowed the receiving game there. But AJ Brown has made an impact these last 2 seasons where they went to the championship. Yes, they went to the AFC championship last year.
Yep, last year.
And they went to the divisional round this year.
This year, yep.
Correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And
sorry, continue. Go
on. No worries. It's hard for me to because I think right now the AFC is more competitive than the NFC overall, especially it feels like we're starting one candy bar before we're finishing another. But going into the 2021 season, you're going to have a potentially resurgent. You're going to have all sorts of teams coming back and all sorts of teams staying in the picture. I'm not going to get into that because it's getting ahead of ourselves. But I feel like the Titans have what it takes to contend again, and I feel like he's a big factor in that. I mean, I'm not as much of a stat analyzer as you are. In fact, I just lost all my...
No, that's fine. Because I got it all this year. I mean, he scored 11 touchdowns, which, I mean, as a wide receiver to score double-digit touchdowns, not only is it very difficult, it's very rare to do it consistently, especially. But AJ Brown, I mean, you talk about a guy 70 catches for over 1,075 yards and 11 touchdowns this year. I really believe he was a big reason as to why, like you said, he's a big reason as to why their passing game was so relevant, even though it didn't seem like it. But he really was a big reason that you had to account for them. Like you really had to make sure you were accounting for AJ Brown and a lot of their other receivers. I mean, you talk about guys also like Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith. I mean, just Adam Humphries, who I think was injured for a large part of the season. But I mean, still, you had to know where a guy like AJ Brown was. So. I think he's a very, like you said, I think he's a very special player. And I'll give them a little bit more of a background. We do this for the show. We bring back their high school days and where they were recruited to and all that, just because I think it just gives our fans a little more. So AJ Brown, I can't type today. I apologize for those of you at home. But give you guys a little bit of a background from according to 24/7 Sports, 6'1", 225, coming out of high school out of Starkville, Mississippi. I wanted to say that very Southern-like, but I did not, out of respect. But former 4-star recruit and made it to Ole Miss. Was a guy that, honestly, throughout his Ole Miss career, you look at a guy that just was. I think when you watched him in college, you kind of saw a guy that he was almost like DK in that. The size, the thing was there, but you just saw a guy that, in my opinion, he was just clearly way more productive. I mean, you talk nearly 3,200 receiving yards, and just was. Excuse me, that was
over two. Is that over 2 seasons or?
Over a couple seasons. I'm sorry, I clicked on Antonio Brown, his college stats. I don't care. Whoops. I count about AJ Brown. I apologize. I must have the wrong stats here. So, Antonio AJ Brown. Good Lord, Colton. AJ Brown in college caught for nearly 3,000 receiving yards. Like I said, more productive than DK Metcalf. Had over 2,900 receiving yards, closer to 3,000, 19 total touchdowns, and including a sophomore year in which he caught 75 passes for over 1,250 yards and 11 touchdowns. So you could kind of see it. If you were just taking a glance at this and comparing AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, you probably thought that AJ Brown was going to be the better wide receiver in the NFL. And I think they're just being former teammates at Ole Miss. It's kind of tough to kind of talk about because they're teammates and they're going to have nothing but love for each other. But I think it's interesting because they're both just men in college and they got it done. So, but yeah, sorry. To continue your assessment of AJ Brown.
I just want to correct myself earlier in case there are any Titans or Ravens fans yelling at the screen at this point, but they lost. The Titans lost in the wild card round to the Ravens.
Okay.
Okay. I got mixed up. So,
no.
He wasn't the most dominant player on the receiving core, but he definitely made an impact. And when you've got, Sometimes reading these tables is like doing math for me, which is not my strong suit.
No worries.
Where is the I'd like lost the receiving table. Anyway, I can't.
No, that's okay. I'll kind of help you out here. I'm sorry. But he did catch. I don't know why, but it is a little weirder on the NFL page. But he this year you can find it.
I'm on
what I
Pro
do is
Football Reference, which is probably the problem.
Actually, Pro Football Reference is actually very effective, but it's tougher to read if you don't know how to navigate it. But yeah, he did navigate 70 catches for 1,075 yards and 11 touchdowns this year, and I think he can definitely be something special. For me, though, when it comes to the Titans, again, I think the NFL
downs,
is large.
Which is not for nothing, by the way.
Yeah, off of 70 catches, which is like, I'm not good at math, but like that's more often than not.
That's real good. That's what we call real good.
Yeah. He's catching a pass for a first down, so I think it's in its own right is definitely impressive. So, but for me, I felt like the Titans are one of those teams, and I think everybody really, you have to have. It's important to look back and make sure you look at everything, and so because of that, the offensive line is so slept on. It's so drastically important for me that I think it just needs to be continually brought up. A guy by the Nate Davis, a former guard out of Charlotte, is a guy that I think needs to get more credit. Nate Davis, this last season, now he struggled in his first season, which in the NFL, and not everybody's going to be a Tristan Wirfs. Okay, you're not going to go out there and just immediately start owning people. You're going to have some growing pains. You're going to have some things that just don't go your way. But at the end of the day, I think Nate Davis has done a great job. He's 6'3", 316, a former third-round selection by the Titans, once again out of Charlotte. But Nate Davis, I think, he did struggle in his first year, but he came out this year and only allowed one sack on 1,074 pass rushing reps, which sounds a lot very similar to a guy like Tristan Wirfs. But I believe off the top of my head, Tristan Wirfs did have a couple more penalties or whatever, or maybe it was Davis, but it doesn't matter. They both played a good amount of snaps. Actually, he played one more snap than Tristan Wirfs and had a couple more penalties, but it doesn't matter. Point is, they're both great players in terms of the offensive line that deserve more credit. A guy like Nate Davis, I think, could honestly be a big reason as to why Derrick Henry ran for over 2,000 yards this year. But their entire offensive line is rated, and I'll make another video about that a little bit later. But give you another little bit of a background on Nate Davis. Former two-star recruit out of Stonebridge High School in Ashburn, Virginia, and committed to Charlotte, excuse me. So, and went on and to have a pretty productive career there and came to the NFL and did his thing. So again, 1,074 snaps, 5 penalties, and only 1 sack allowed. I mean, now the Titans are clearly going to be more of a running the football kind of a team. But when you have a guy like Nate Davis who nearly had a 70.0 PFF grade this year, as opposed to last year, when again he did struggle and had about a 41 PFF grade, a big jump there. And last year he played about almost twice as many snaps. He allowed 8 more. He allowed a couple more penalties. I believe it was 5 more penalties off the top of my head. 3 more penalties, excuse me. So he played 300 more pass rushing reps, allowed 3 more penalties, and allowed 6 less sacks than his, which was incredible. I think that's one heck of a jump, and a guy that has started to find his own in the NFL as the starting right guard for the Titans. So I definitely think he's going to continue to be something special, and be a lot of fun for Titans fans, and continue to lead the way for Derrick Henry. But I think we need to finish up by talking about one free agent that both of our teams need to sign, or one thing one move our teams need to make. What do you think that either a free agent or one move the Cowboys need to make right now?
Surprisingly, I'm not going to talk about the quarterback position of the Dallas Cowboys, because I think what I'm going to put forward here, it's pie in the sky, and I have very little confidence that it'll happen. But I think if Jerry were to drive the old Brinks truck up to Patrick Peterson's place and make him an offer, that would be a helpful negotiating tactic with offering Dak Prescott a slightly lower price than Dak Prescott wants. I think there's an argument to be made that Dak deserves it. There are a lot of Cowboy fans. I guess I am talking about the quarterback, even though I'm trying to talk about the cornerback. There are a lot of the Cowboys fans out there who said, let Dak walk. We can do better. You know, if we have a good O-line, we've got good weapons at running back and in the receiving core and all that. I would like to see Dak be our quarterback of the future. And I think having a star on the defense, especially a shutdown corner like Patrick Peterson, it's an enticement for Dak because it no longer requires him to score 45 points a game in order to win.
Yeah.
Because I mean, our offense is tight, and when the O-line is healthy, which it wasn't in 2020, you could put just about anybody back there, as you saw with the carousel of quarterbacks that we had, and their quality of play depended as much on the O-line as it did on how many points the defense gave up. And we got a handful of guys back there who are going to be good going forward. But a safety, a great safety would be good. But I feel like a serious star cornerback would go a lot farther. Not just for the overall health of the team and for potential playoff viability going forward, but to take the pressure off of whoever the quarterback is. Hopefully it's Dak Prescott. And hopefully that doesn't gut Jerry's ability to pay anyone else in the positions we really, really need filled on the defense. Looking at the free agents that are available, Richard Sherman, DJ Hayden. If we sign Josh Norman, I'll burn my jersey. No, I won't. But I would prefer not, because we've humiliated him so many times that it would be as hyped as he is as a cornerback. It would be a demotion for us in a lot of ways. So I don't see Richard Sherman having a whole lot more longevity. He's not what he was, and a lot of what he was before depended on how good the people around him were. I don't think just bringing him in could fix all of life's problems. So Patrick Peterson's a very attractive prospect to fill in the Cowboys' needs on the defense. I've heard zero talk of this before this morning. Before I looked on who the free agents were that were available at that position, and I was like, oh, yeah, let's make that happen. Like, if I was playing Madden, that's what I'd do. But I don't, who knows what motivates Jerry other than jersey sales and corporate sponsorship. So that's the defensive backfield needs to be addressed as much, if not more, than who's playing quarterback for America's team.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think, but I think for the Vikings specifically, I agree with you. I was actually thinking about that, man. Patrick Peterson to the Cowboys, that'd be very interesting. For me though, the Vikings need to sign Joe Thuney. And it's not because, I think Joe Thuney, to give you guys a little bit of a background, has been with the Patriots for a while and just absolutely killed it. Been a big reason as to why they've been so effective and just been a playoff team and a perennial Super Bowl team. Was originally a third-round pick back in 2016, and he just gets it done. I mean, played 980 snaps this year, only allowed 2 sacks. That's 2 sacks, not snacks. I had 3 penalties as well. But just continues to get it done. Had a 74.2 PFF grade. Last year he had no penalties, not a single penalty, and only allowed 1 sack. Had a 77.4 PFF grade on nearly 1,200 pass snaps. Excuse me.
You don't
the year
think
before that?
Sorry. I was going to say, you don't think the possibility of going to the Vikings might ruin his streak of no penalties? Because I just feel like And for going back 30 years, that's like a signature move of the Vikings O-line. It's just, rinky-dink penalties to kill games.
Yes, I think if he were to come to the Vikings, maybe they would go up a bit, but I hope his sack numbers would not. I mean, you think about it, like I was going to in 2018, he was at he played 1,120 pass rushing snaps, had 4 penalties and allowed 0 sacks. So you're seeing, okay, penalty numbers are whatever they are, but he allows 0 to 1 sacks a year. He just continues to get it done. A North Carolina State alumni with Garrett Bradbury, or at least I don't know alumni, but he played at North Carolina State with Garrett Bradbury. So, or at least was there at the same time. So I think if you were able to get a guy like Joe Thuney and take care of that, I think, a guy that's only 28 years old, I would pay him $15 million a year. I really would. The Vikings need to cut a lot of players. Maybe a guy like Kyle Rudolph. And there's a plethora of like Dan Bailey. There's a plethora of players they'll need to cut. But I think they need to go out and sign Joe Thuney to take care of the offensive line finally. Get the Vikings a starting left guard so that they can find somebody to start at right guard and just go, baby. Just go. So anything else you'd like to add, my man?
No, I like it. A great O-line makes a mediocre quarterback better, and there are few quarterbacks more mediocre than Kirk Cousins. But I'd throw shade at him, but he's gone out there and balled, and when he does, the quality of the O-line play is always a big factor in that. So it would definitely help the Vikings out. I mean, your whole conference just changed. You got a new Detroit Lions look, and
Yep.
Who knows what's happening with the Bears? I feel like every other season for the Vikings could be their season.
Yeah, it's almost like the Cowboys fans always say it's their year every year. The Vikings fans are just like, meh, if it happens, it happens. Like, right. I mean, honestly, I've gotten to the point now where I've said that to many people, even back in 2017 when they won it, I was like, you know what? If it happens, it happens. Great. If it doesn't, great. Whatever. So, but no, I got to say thank you, man. Joe, it's always so much fun. You really came out here and you honestly, in a few ways showed me up. So you put a lot of great information out there, and you did a great job. But deeply appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate being on here. Appreciate just shooting the breeze about football. And it's, as much as it saddens my heart that there's only one game left for the next 8 months or whatever, 7 months, it's going to be quite the off season. There's going to be a lot to look forward to, no matter who you're rooting for. Even if you're a fan of the Browns, you have things to look forward to. Like there's kind of a sense of optimism. If Tom Brady can jump from one team to another and take them all the way to the Super Bowl, who knows what can happen in 2021. So I look forward to all the craziness that we have in store for us in our future, in our near and far futures.
Absolutely. But yeah, once again, we thank Joe for coming on, and doing this thing. Did a lot of great things. I'm just making sure I'm not muted here. I don't know why it's doing this. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. It shows on your screen that it's a little lagging a little bit. Sorry. No, we're going to get out of here, but we do appreciate it once again, Joe, coming on. It was a great show. A lot of great things coming on. So make sure you guys, those of you that watch us on YouTube, once again, to like and subscribe down below, leave a like and a comment. It helps people find the show. We greatly appreciate it. And also remember to like us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're on it all. Check out our website at sportsbeatpodcast.com. And any questions or videos you'd like us to make sure you guys submit those to thesportsbp@yahoo.com. With that, have a great night. Take it easy. And as from always from this show, peace out.